This is the Bullet List Podcast with my friend Bob and some random bloke from the USA.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Bullet List. And I am actually going to tell that funny story about how we just did half the show. And like a true professional, I forgot to hit the record button.
So we've had a practice run. So if we make any mistake from now on, it's no excuses.
But in this new wild west of virtual and hybrid and in-person events in the age of COVID, it just goes to show you somebody that actually does virtual events and has to record things and do that. Me, we all make mistakes. Right?
It happens, and all you have to do is just say, "Right, fine, it went wrong. What do you do next?" Instead of looking for blame or getting all panicked about it. So
on this one, I take 100% of the blame.
Absolutely.
It was a great conversation.
Oh, it's brilliant. And you guys totally missed out. But we're going to do it all over again now.
Exactly. All right. So we're diving right into the short list this week. What?
So we're going to talk about the iOS changes.
Yeah.
To email. What Apple are introducing to. Well, initially it's going to upset a lot of people, but then they're going to sit back and go, actually, no, that's not a problem.
Yeah, no, and as we mentioned earlier, so iOS, with the rollout of iOS 15 coming in just a few weeks, Apple is making some huge changes to email and the way that it works. So if you are an event marketer, an association marketer, if you do the marketing for your nonprofit, there are some things you are not going to be able to track anymore for your Apple, the people that use Apple. So they have this new thing, Mail Privacy Protection, which is going to eliminate the ability to track how many people open your email. Then they're also going to be then they'll also hide IP addresses. And most marketers, that's not a thing. I mean, it's great for telling what country somebody's from or things like that. But then they've got another one called Hide My Email, which will allow users to use a quote unquote fake email when they sign up for your newsletter list. They'll still get your email, but it will be masked. And as we said before, I think that this is actually a good thing.
Oh, yes, I totally agree.
Because we're going to actually have to start paying attention to the metrics that matter, not the metrics that don't. And how many people like a social media post, how many people, open an email aren't real metrics. Okay, wait, so it shows you that you can have a pretty picture that people click, right? It's not, if you are having an event, your ultimate goal is to have people register. And a click isn't a registration. So now you will be able to use, as you were saying in our last one, URLs to track where.
Absolutely. So basically, how many times your email has been opened is now become a vanity metric that you shouldn't be worrying about. What you need to worry about is that has that URL been clicked, which you can detect because you can track that. And then what action happened after. So if somebody's opened up the email and they've clicked the link, which you can encode with a tracking thing on it, like a UTM code, you will know that they've gone to the website. But what happened next? Did they book? And that's much more useful than, oh, great, 100 people have opened my email and one person booked. It's vanity metric.
Yes, butts in seats is a much better metric than 480 people open my email. And then when you dive into those stats, it turns out that one person opened the email 43 times.
Yeah. So as I say, a vanity metric that is no longer important. The actions taken after clicking is.
Yes, absolutely. And now next up on the short list, a lovely little segue there, is the fact, and so when we choose the short list items, they're from the past few days, right? There's not a time on them. We may find something from 4 years ago that makes it on the short list. But this one, when we added it to the short list, it was a thing, right? It was CES is going to require proof of vaccination to attend CES. And since that, just a couple days ago, at least here in the United States, there's been a flood of new mandates and requirements for vaccines. For example, Delta Airlines, if you work for Delta, you must now either have a vaccination or pay an extra $200 a month for your health insurance, which you don't have that issue over there, do you? We got to pay. We pay through the nose for health insurance here.
Yeah. Actually, I've, just the last couple of days, I think I may have seen it this morning, there's a bit of debate about who should be treated first, who's got COVID. If you are double vaccinated, which I highly recommend to anybody listening, and you get COVID, should you receive priority treatment over someone who didn't have the vaccination and has got COVID? This is along the same lines of, should smokers receive any treatment because for their smoking, if they get cancer or have some sort of illness related to smoking, should they receive free treatment, or should they be not prioritized high like everybody else?
Sure.
It's going to be an interesting conversation.
Well, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. It's I don't get it. And I don't want to get it. Here, especially over here, people are getting very, very tired of people who refuse the vaccination and come up with all their crackpot freaking theories. It's just time. Get the damn vaccination so we can all get back to work.
It's right now, it's really sad to see that the people who are protesting against vaccination, saying all sorts of conspiracy theories, or I'm healthy enough, I don't need it. There's all the religious people, various priests, vicars, leaders of congregations saying, God will protect me, that's fine. Sad to see that they're the ones now in hospital with respirators, and they are very, very sick or dying.
If you are the religious exception there, did you ever stop to think that God gave us the vaccine? He gave us those lovely, smart people who were able to whip that thing up in record time.
Yeah, I have things to say about that sort of things, but in another time, another place.
A different podcast.
Yeah, basically. We don't want to offend the listener.
Yes, and so let's go right into tables. Because that seems like a natural progression.
Oh, yes. Google Tables for Teams. That sounds really interesting. Really interesting.
It is, and it's actually been around for a long time. It's been hidden, scrolled down, buried in what do they call? What is it? Google Labs, G Labs, something like that.
G Labs, yeah, I think that's what they call it these days.
But if it's so, for anyone who's ever used Airtable, we as a company use Smartsheet. Tables are Excel spreadsheets on steroids, right? You can do a lot of those same things that you can do in a regular spreadsheet, but you can do them better. For example, you can put formatted text in a table. You can put images in a table. You can put all kinds of different things. And then with that data, you can actually do a lot more with it. You can link sheets and tables and all kinds of crazy stuff together in a much easier way than you could with, say, spreadsheets. And so, yeah.
Well, it's very much like a really fancy graphical front end to a database, making it much more friendly, but also giving it much more valuable output. So you quickly construct something when you get data out, and much easier to put data in. So it gives you a lot more, you can play with it much easier. Play with your data, examine it, create forms and stuff. It looks to be good. It's Google Labs for the moment. I believe next year they're going to be doing a proper product for it. But as we have talked about, Google products don't always last, as in RSS readers.
No, and I don't know. Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I also, as I said in our last non-recording, I actually kind of think it's a good stepping stone, right? It's a good way for people in the nonprofit association event conference world to give it a go with tables, right? And try and see what they can do with that data very inexpensively before you move on. If it takes off like wildfire, like everything we do here at i3 events is in Smartsheet, right? We use tables all the time. All of our speaker forums connect to these tables, sponsors, all that stuff. And we do a ton with it. And I think this is a nice opportunity for smaller organizations to give it a go without the huge investment of moving on to the next product. So yeah, to your point, the fact that Google will kill off products they basically are like the Grim Reaper when it comes to tech products.
They have a criteria that nobody else knows, and things come, things go. But as you say, it's not so much that the product itself, but the idea behind it. It gives you a chance to play with your data, and if you want the more flexibility, you want it to be there tomorrow, move up to a paid version.
Exactly. All right. And on that note, that's going to take care of the shortlist for this episode.
You're listening to the Bullet List Podcast.
So, and we're back. And so for this week's bullet list, we are talking about
hybrid events.
Yes.
In particular, hybrid events are here to stay. There's been some discussion about, hybrid events, we don't need them anymore. They're going away. No, so they're another tool.
Here's what I love about the meetings and events industry. I listen to all the online chatter, and I'm in all the groups and all that, and all the people, let's get back to the way it was. Let's get back to the way it was. Let's get back to the way it was. What everyone that is out there screaming from the rooftops about that is they don't realize, or they're not realizing, is the rest of the world doesn't want to go back to the way it was.
Yeah, well, when you discover a new tool that works and provides we're going to talk about what the benefits of a hybrid event and the tools that we use. But when you find something that works and it does the job, it's not a case you go, I don't need it more because it doesn't fit the situation. Eventually, you will find another situation where you need it. So, as I say, it is another tool in the event planner's toolbox.
Yeah, well, and the first bullet on this week's bullet list is ROI, right? The return on investment for hybrid events. So, and I actually have a really good story about that. So,
go ahead.
And again, because this is the bullet list, and this is only one of those bullets, we're not going to take a deep dive into ROI. That'll be a whole nother episode. But on this one bullet. So we had a client that used to have an in-person event with people all over the globe. 250 people came. Then COVID happened and they went virtual. Because they went virtual, 500 people came. A lot of those weren't the people that go to the in-person event. So now, starting next year, it's going to be hybrid so that you can bring in that global audience, all those people that perhaps can't afford to come to the United States. Sometimes it happens in London. Sometimes it happens in Asia. The people that can't afford to get to those places can now attend the event. And that right there, I mean, that's a very rudimentary return on investment type deal, but it's there. The ROI is there.
Yeah, and when we mentioned the other bullet points, that's really feeding back into the ROI. In particular, bullet point 2, we will, as you said, Keith, we will come back to a proper episode about the ROI. But in the meantime, we can't really spend all that much time talking about it today. But yeah, talking of ROI, bullet point 2, it's much better for sponsors.
Yeah,
the exposure, it's not just limited to in person. You have access to all the virtual audience.
Well, that's really true. And with your poor sponsors, it used to be, or at the live event anyway, they set up their booth or their stand, whatever country you're in, and whatever you call them. they're there when that event is over, they close up shop and it's done. Whereas with the virtual or the hybrid, or at least the virtual part of the hybrid component, if you open parts of that to the public, even if you don't, I mean, it still lives on for a year. How many times have I been to a show and I'll be cruising the show floor? Holiday Showcase is a big industry event here in Chicago. Every year I'll go and I'm walking the show floor and I'll see a booth and go, let me get back there. Right? I don't stop back there because I get caught in 14 conversations walking down the aisle. Well, awesome. If they're online, I can just go back after the event, zip in, go check them out, get their information and contact them. That information lives for a long time.
Yeah, so what I say, basically, if you are an exhibitor, you could then move up a level and become a sponsor and get featured on all the virtual. So so the in-person visitors can go back to the website for the show, see the virtual segments, and that's better all around.
It really is. Now, and I also I don't want to kid anyone, right? Your sponsors aren't going to be getting rich off of people, or depending on your industry. But, I think that people always have a higher expectations of the amount of clicks sponsors are going to get in a virtual platform and things like that. But I think that if somebody makes the effort to click, right, it's not a cold lead at that point.
If you can manage expectations and at least explain the potential benefits, it's no different than saying, do you want to put a big poster up on a billboard? Yeah, people are going to drive past and see it. It's not going to make them pick up a phone and dial straight away, but it's in the mind, and that's who they're most likely going to look at when they start researching. Oh, yeah, I remember that company. Yeah, I saw them at such a show.
Yeah, well, that comes right down to, only 4 people clicked on your virtual booth. Well, were they the right 4 people?
Yeah.
If they're the right 4 people, that's an amazing show.
Yeah. We'll come back to some of those ideas. First of all, for number 3, though, we want to talk about traveling. People aren't doing it still.
Yeah,
not really.
No. Let me tell you, I've had to go out and travel a little bit, and it's still not fun. Right? It's still not something that I think that the regular rank and file people are wanting to do yet. And I think it's going to be a long time before they actually want to.
I think at the moment, from what I read, people are really keen to go on holiday because they haven't had that break. So that's a thing. But however, traveling for a show, they're working out the risk on that one and deciding not to.
Yeah. And then, we've got, some of our clients where, the people that work for the state or the state government have to go. A lot of states aren't allowing, travel yet. A lot of companies aren't. And a lot of people have simply realized that they can attend an event, they can attend a conference virtually and not miss little Timmy's baseball game or soccer game or whatever it happens to be, that they can actually live in their world and still get this quality education. And that's another reason why those people are really going to be wanting a hybrid component.
Yeah. Of course, the other thing is, if people are traveling, there's also, as we've mentioned before in other episodes, there is a staffing shortage in hotels. And it's possible that you may not get to stay those 2 or 3 days that event demands.
Yeah, or at the very least, it's a miserable experience. I had to go. I did an event in Minneapolis. It was an in-person event, first one since COVID. And, a lot of hotels aren't doing housekeeping yet. They're on minimal staffs. They're not doing, the cleaning. Yes, for the COVID cleaning, they're wiping down surfaces. But what I mean is the general maintenance, is getting overlooked. Right. And so do we need to be traveling right now? I don't know.
And there's also, just to briefly mention, there's also at hotels, they may require vaccination certificates. The events themselves may require vaccination certificates. And who is inspecting those or who has authority to stop people from attending. It's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So, but anyway, let's move on to the next point on the bullet list. And this is one that is absolutely 100% true, which is recorded content lives longer.
Oh, yes, definitely. I really like this point because there's so much you can do with your video content, whether it's sourced from a virtual or a hybrid event. There's so much you can do with it and make it last, and it becomes a really useful thing for keeping the event in people's minds.
Oh, yeah. I mean, recorded content, and then I can't talk today. There is. I mean, you can chop it up and make podcast episodes out of it. You can, have people pay to after the conference, right? You couldn't attend live or virtual or whatever, right? Okay, you can get X amount of sessions for $50, whatever. There's so much that you can do with recorded content that I don't understand why all organizations don't record everything.
Yeah, basically. But as you say, you can take important. So you got a hybrid event, and the speakers talk about something that's got great value. He talks about 5 minutes on that piece, and it's great value. Right. Well, take that out, and you can then put it out onto YouTube or LinkedIn or any other place, and you've got something that people are going to watch and want to see more of.
Oh, God, just buckets of stuff you can do with it.
Oh, you could take some of the more important audio content and, as you say, turn them into podcasts, or you could turn them into short audio content of a couple of minutes. Again, put it onto your favorite social media platform.
Run it through Otter and get the transcription and post it as written content. It's so much, so much.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's move straight on to number 5, because number 5 is also a topic that we need to dedicate an episode on, and
or two.
I would love to get a guest to speak on this in particular, and that's how hybrid can enable inclusivity.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's a word that's actually in the Oxford English Dictionary, but inclusivity is now something that everybody's talking about, and rightly so.
Oh, absolutely. And, for us, okay, let's take it to the nth degree. Oh, it's a real thing, right? If you have attendees who are immunocompromised and cannot get the vaccine for some reason, right, it allows them to attend. Right. It allows them to be there and participate. Yes, we understand that it's not going to be the same as being there live, but for those folks, it does give them the sense of belonging, right? They're in their place, right? You've made a spot for them at the table.
There are so many people, but there are a lot of different kinds of disability that would prevent a person from being there in person.
Yep.
And hybrid is going to allow those people to take part, to be there in the community that's forming around that event without excluding them.
Yeah, and you know what? That's actually one of the biggest reasons why hybrid should be embraced, right? It's we're opening the doors to everybody who wants to be there. There are so many different, disabilities, especially now with COVID, that would prevent you from traveling. But I mean, just think about all of the other folks that can't generally come to your event. You are now opening up that door for them. Yeah,
absolutely. It's something that's going to be talked about more. There's going to be a lot more action. It's something that's going to develop and go on, and it's going to be fascinating how people will react to it and say, yeah, this is something we need to talk about and need to do.
Yeah, and with the hybrids, right? I get it, right? It's planning to events. I plan events for a living, so it is. You've got to plan the in person and you have to plan the virtual. But what I don't want everyone to lose sight of is it gets easier over time, right? Right now you're trying to combine, chocolate and peanut butter, right? Doesn't sound like a good idea, but once you put them together, it will get easier over time, the planning of it, and the costs are going to come down, right? No one expects you to be perfect your first time out. So if your version of a hybrid event is simply sticking a camera in the back of the room, plugging it into the audio and sending it out to Zoom, okay, great. At least you tried, right? At least you're doing something. So you can learn from that experience, and then the next go round, you can make it a little bit better. I don't want everyone to get caught up in the, oh, it's not perfect, so we're not going to do it, right? Done is better than perfect is my motto, right? And at least if you can get it out there, that is a great first step.
If any doubt, talk to your audience, see what they want. How do they want it? Make it into a community thing where you can say to people, look, we want to include as many as we possibly can. What do you need? What can we do to make this better for you? How can we improve the experience?
Absolutely. And that is a perfect way to end this week's bullet list. Or this episode, not this week. Because sometimes we do 2 a week, 3 a week, 5 a week. We got to keep our 4 listeners happy.
Oh, totally.
All right. So.
No, we got. Hopefully, you'll cut this bit between that little bit out because.
Yeah.
So we've had the music. So this week, you may have noticed we've had a little bit of music and a voiceover that comes in between the segments. We would like to thank Ollie, a nice British guy who I've got to know, who is looking to become a professional voiceover artist. We'll provide details to him in the show notes. As ever, if you want to find out more about this podcast, we have a website, which is bullet-list.com, where we have a listing of the various platforms we're on, the podcast RSS feed, and the website RSS feed.
It's our home on the web.
It is indeed our little humble home.
On the interwebs.
On the interwebs. So, I think that brings us to the end. So, thank you, listener. And...
Thanks, Roger.
Well, it might be too. It might be my mum as well. But anyway, thank you very much for listening, and you'll hear us next time.